All right, good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome back to another episode of the CQA, our daily morning live stream answering your coffee questions or your questions about coffee. And I'm Jay, your host. Welcome back to the show. It is, what is it today? Today is Wednesday, March 20th, and we're back in the studio here, back from the road in Philadelphia. I was in Philadelphia the last couple of days. You've probably been following along to visit the PAC Expo East trade show, which is all about packaging and stuff. And then yesterday I was going to go back again to the show on Tuesday, but then I already saw everything Monday, so I didn't go back. I just kind of hung out at my cousin's house and planned on leaving early, but ended up hanging out the entire day just talking. So a good time. It was a good time. So how's it going? Welcome back to the show. So when we were last here in the studio was on Friday, and we brewed up some coffee. We're trying to see about brewing coffee in the Stanley thermos, and I said that I was going to see how it survived overnight, 24 hours, and see the temperature. Well, I lied. I didn't actually get to it. It's been sitting here the whole time. So Saturday came and went, Sunday came and went, Monday, Tuesday I was away, and so it's still sitting here, still sealed from Friday morning. And I thought, well, you know what? When I saw it last night when I got home, I was like, oh, maybe I'll just toss it. But then why don't we use it here on the show? Let's open up and see if there's any kind of, if there's any residual heat after all this time. Because if you remember, it's a steel-cladded stainless steel interior that uses charcoal dust as an insulator. That's supposed to be really good. Now, it's really only going to last like 24 hours or so. But 4 days later, does it have any residual heat left? Let me pour a little bit more so you can see it on the video. It does not seem. No, it's more like, room temperature now. It's not really. There's no flavor is not bad. I mean, it's okay. It's okay. Mom, good morning to you. And Craig, aged coffee. Aged coffee is always a good thing. And we talked about this on Friday about how coffee in a container will lose some of its essence. And there's definitely a difference. If I think about, it's a little bit flatter. It's still pleasant, right? Because the coffee itself was nice to start out with. So it's not horrible. It's just not as vibrant as it used to be. I'll make sure that we clean this out today. Let's start fresh again. All right. So today, now that we're back, we got a question from one of our viewers. Mark sent me a message on Instagram and was asking the other week or the other day about today's question. Is Geisha coffee worth the extra cost? Ooh, that's a good question. That's a really good question. If you're not too familiar with Geisha, Geisha is a type of variety of coffee that hit the market about 15 or almost close to 20 years ago, 18 years ago or so. And it took the industry by storm because it was a coffee that was so different. And interestingly enough, back in 2005, oh, my mom is calling. Let me see what my mom is asking. Hello. Yes, that's all finished. No, it's all finished. That is correct. That would be great. All right, thanks. One should never keep their mom waiting. All right, so like I was saying, in 2005, my mentor in coffee, John Sanders, had a place back then called Heinz Public Market Coffee in Seattle, Washington. And John was part of a buying group of people that I think included Mike Perry from Coffee Clutch in Los Angeles, as well as, I believe that, oh my gosh, now I can't remember his name offhand. The owner of the roastery in Kansas City, Missouri. I think the three of them and a couple others were part of this buying group, and they were having the first Hacienda Esmeralda auction. And Hacienda Esmeralda is basically, I believe that the owner, Price Peterson, is kind of a gentleman farmer from some part of the world, moved to Panama and built a beautiful farm. And they found this, my understanding is that they found this varietal of coffee. Good morning, Eduardo. That was very different. It's kind of elongated and it's just a different looking coffee. And it turned out that it produced a very different cup of coffee. Now, a lot of people will tell you it's an exquisite cup of coffee. It's a stunning cup of coffee, that it's the most amazing coffee ever. The reality is just very different. And a lot of those superlatives came about because it was very different, extremely different than others. But in 2005, they had an auction that was, promoting this geisha from Panama, from these Panama geisha from Hacienda Esmeralda. My mentor and that group was the winning bidder of this auction lot. And at the time in 2005, this was the most money ever paid for coffee ever. It was like people were just like, "Oh my gosh, how could you pay that much? It's so extreme, it's so crazy, it's so ridiculous," right? Now, compare that to like last year or the year before. One of my buddies, um, actually, it's hard to remember names sometimes when you're like trying to like go off the cusp. And one of my buddies who's Japanese, his family owns, not Kentaro Maruyama, not him. Anyway, great guy, crazy guy, always trying to encourage me to like buy more auction. So I'm always scared to like go to auction with him because he's always like, "You need to bid more, bid more, bid more." I'm like, okay, chill, chill. Anyway, so he bids on a geisha 2 years ago, the highest price ever paid. Now, 2,000 something. I think it was 2,500 US dollars per pound of coffee. I think total for the lot they spent $100,000 on this coffee. Mark, good morning to you. And crazy, crazy amounts of money, right? Now, rewind back to 2005. And I'm telling you, this was crazy money in 2005. Like just insane amounts of money. People were just freaking out. $21. I think it was 21.50 per pound. Like you can't even buy a geisha very, very much for $20 a pound right now. But back then, man, people were like, "Oh my gosh, craziest." So this Panama Esmeralda geisha in 2005, when I got to try it, because they split up the bag. There was one bag, like 132 pound bag that they split and 5 ways. And so we got 20 pounds. So I was able to get some of it. And it's very different. It was light, floral, delicate, very tea-like characteristics, just superb, superb experience, sublime experience, especially back then when we're talking about like fruity naturals and then like chocolatey wash coffees, and we're talking about espressos. We want more body and nuttiness and like chocolatiness, all of that was the world then in 2005. This thing comes on and it's just like, oh my gosh, man, floral, tea, craziness. So, one thing about coffee people is that you're always trying to find an edge, right? What kind of edge can we find over our competition to set us apart, right? How can we find great coffee that's better than everyone else's? And so people will run to us to buy coffee and laud us. We want to have women throw themselves at our feet. Not that that ever really happens, but anyway, that's just what we want, right? So fast forward. Now we're in a whole other era, right? So now geisha has matured very much, and now geisha can be had for a very expensive amount of money, as well as relatively affordable. Like you can go to some coffee shops and get it for, I don't know, $15 a cup. That's pretty good, and that's not too bad nowadays. When I was starting out and we were charging $15 for the most exquisite coffee, people were like crazy. They're like, "Well, you guys are nuts, man." But whatever the case may be. So is geisha worth the extra cost? That really depends on you, right? And we're going to get a little more into that. So here's something to think about. Like one of my good friends, Frank, he lives in Bangkok, Thailand. He's not a coffee producer. He's not a coffee person. I mean, he's not an industry guy. He's just someone that enjoys really nice coffee. So he likes to visit the different coffee shops in Thailand or wherever he's living. And I remember years ago, it was probably 10 years ago, I was like, "Do you like the geisha?" He's like, "Geisha? If I wanted a drink that tastes like tea, I would drink tea." He's like, I'm not paying that kind of money for that coffee. I want coffee that tastes like coffee. And I was like, what could that? And I think that has a very good point. Like you kind of have to understand your tastes and what you like, right? So let's say, generally speaking, Geisha will offer you tea-like notes, light notes, florally aromatics. If that sounds appealing, then it's probably something it's worth trying. But if it doesn't sound appealing, you're like, what do I want that kind of friffy kind of coffee for? Then it probably will not, it will not appeal to you. But I was trying to think about, let's do some tasting here. So I did have a coffee that's from Geisha, and at first I didn't think that I had any Geisha because honestly I don't really buy Geisha as a buyer for the company because Geisha is expensive, and like my clientele in Baltimore, there's not too many people that are really interested in Geisha or want to spend the kind of money that Geisha costs. And like, I have access to some beautiful Geishas, right? And I remember one year we were down in Costa Rica visiting Tonio Barantes, who owns a place called Cafetalera Urbazoo in the Western Valley. He's got great operations. I would buy a SL28 from him. That's just amazing coffee, beautiful, beautiful SL28s, SL34s. Just like, oh God, this guy really makes beautiful coffee. But he's showing me one day, we're walking through the fields, and he's showing me his geisha plants, right? The geisha trees are there, and he's like, try some of the cherry. And here's the thing about coffee cherries, right? You can eat the cherry, right? It's really a fascinating thing. So you pick the seed. I don't have any, unfortunately, I don't have any here, but you pick the bean. You want to pick it when it's red or crimson, so so that it's fully ripe. But you pick the bean and you hold it and you squeeze it. And when you squeeze it, the part that comes from the pod, from the stem, will split and it will open. And you can shoot in your mouth like that, right? And the bean, which is the seed of the bean or the seed of the fruit, is covered in this pulpy matter or this fruity pulpy matter called mucilage. That mucilage tends to be sugary and sweet and flavorful, and so you taste this, and it was so interesting because there's always a nice sweetness that's pleasant on any coffee that's ripe. This one had a very distinct taste of lychee, right? And I was like, oh, I'll be honest, man. I don't even know if Tonio knows this, but like I started eating more. I'm like, ooh, it's quite tasty. I love lychee, that's what lychees, whatever you want to, however you want to pronounce it. I love them. Grew up eating them, love them. Can't get enough of them. And I'm just like, and so they're quite. So it's a different fruit experience from that part. So totally a different type of varietal. I don't know exactly the origin, but they say that the origin comes. It's an aberration of Arabica that has origins out in Ethiopia. I'm not really a geneticist. My friend Miguel Meza would know a lot more about this than I do. All right, so let's get into this. So this is a coffee that's geisha from Colombia by a producer named Hernan Calderon. Right. This particular coffee was sourced and roasted by this company. Oh, gosh, put your name on the bag so we know who you are. I mean, of course, if you're going to their shop and you're buying this in their shop, you know the name. But for someone like me, this coffee was actually, I did not buy. I was actually gifted this by one of my good friends, Pete Licata, the 2013 World Barista Champion. Him and I came up in the business together. And he now works for a coffee company in Melbourne. And I can't remember the name. Maybe you guys might know the name of this. Here's the logo. Veneziano. There it is. Veneziano. There it is. So he works for Veneziano. I think that's right. And so when he was here last year, he's like, "Hey man, here's some coffee." I was like, "Oh, thanks, dude." I was like, "What is this? Geisha?" Oh, Geisha. All right. So as you see, it's Colombia, right? Colombia's close to Panama, but once this auction happened in 2005, people were just freaking out, and so suddenly everybody's trying to propagate Geisha, because they see the money. They're like, change, right? They're like, oh my gosh, we're gonna sell coffee for hundreds of dollars, and some of them are. But so I don't really know much about Hernan Calderon and his operations, but I'm sure it's very nice. And I have had this coffee a couple times since I've gotten it. But as you can see here on the back, we're going to look at their notes, and it says wash process, Geisha varietal, and here are the three major flavor notes: apricot, chamomile, and lavender. So very light tones, fruitier tones, lavender. You're not really seeing too much chamomile and lavender. Those are more like tea type of notes that you're going to, for flavor notes that you'd see. But let's go look at the coffee itself. Let me zoom in for you. We're going to pour it here in our monkey pot. As you can see, the bean itself is relatively similar to other beans as far as shape. Now, this particular coffee is very lightly roasted. On my reference monitor, it looks a bit, on camera, it looks a bit more medium, but in person, it really is quite lightly roasted. I don't know if that shows through better there, but it is a rather light roast. There is some light florally notes. This coffee was given to me during the SCA last year, so it's nearly a year old. You know me, I don't really do all those things. Okay, so what we're going to take this coffee, we're going to brew it up and see what it's like. Now, granted, it is almost a year old, so coffee that you buy, and I haven't really taken care of it, like, I haven't frozen it or anything. It's just been sitting around, living its life. So as we've talked about in the past, coffee 2 months out has pretty much reached an equilibrium point that it's going to stay at that kind of flavor profile for probably 2 years or longer, depending on the roast profile. Like the darker the roast, it's like if you get to Starbucks level roasting, hey, that thing's never going to change. It's always going to taste that way. So let's look at our measuring. We've got our cheapo Timu scale that's still working well. Like it's got this textured surface, but it still slides. So, be careful if you decide to get it. I mean, why wouldn't you? It's quite cheap. I did have someone kind of chastise me the other day in person. They were like, we really should be buying better quality from the nicer manufacturers. And I was like, yeah, you're right. But sometimes you want to know what's cheap and, you want to save some money. So there it is. This is, the other comparable ones are $100, $200. This was what, $10 maybe at the most? Okay, we'll leave 24.5. Sometimes you got to save a little cash. I get it. Put that back in its bag. And today we're going to brew with the origami. Right? I love this origami. I'm really liking this origami. I was a bit skeptical about a year ago. I was like, origami, why do I need another brewer? So when I went to Japan and bought it, I was still skeptical, but I was like, okay, I'll give it a try. Now that we've been using the show, I'm like, oh, it's not bad. I'm kind of enjoying it. All right, so we've got our origami filter with the nice texture. I like the texture. I'm going to fold it over again. Oh, wait, why am I doing this? I need to grind the coffee. Grind. Let's put that out of the way. We're going to grind coffee now. Get some of that excess coffee in there. Were we like a little bit long last time? Let's go a couple clicks coarser. We're going to grind it up. I don't think that was right. There's a lot of coffee in here for what little I put in. I think there might have been some coffee left in the grinder from last week. Let's start this again. Let me just make a quick adjustment here. So we lost 10 grams. Craig says, I like how the sides of the Kalita Wave filters fit in the ridges of the... Oh, you know what? I haven't tried that. I will have to dig out some Kalita Wave filters. The 185s, right? Is that right? And try that out. All right, let's redo this again. Oh, maybe it was empty. I don't know. Normally it should be empty, but I feel a little bit suspicious. So Okay, let's try again. This is where the fellow Ode Mark II really blows this grinder out of the water. Okay. Let's get all this back in order here. Boop. Boop. Is that too tight? Does that feel too tight of a framing? No, that should be all right. Ooh, let's do this. Maybe we can make this a thumbnail at some point. So let's put this here. Is that a thumbnail? Oh, that's not a focus. There we go. Let's do this. Thumbnail, YouTube, nice. All right, let's get that over here. We'll put that over there. Good, good. We need, we reheat up our water. Got to zero out the scale. Okay. Oh, I think this might start to time on its own, huh? I don't know, because it was timing. I don't know why it was timing. But it didn't do that in any other situation. Okay, we got the boiling going on here. I have to say, having all of this timer and stuff on the machine, on the brewer, is quite handy. So we're going to go about 75 grams just to saturate our 80. We're gonna let that go. It's almost at 30 seconds already. So we're just gonna continue on. And as always, I just like to, fill it up. And you know what? Maybe this is too coarse. Like, look at the way that just flowed through here, right? That's going pretty fast. I don't like that. I don't like that. I would like a little bit of loft. See how quickly that just dissipated? It just dropped. That's a concerning. But maybe it's not so bad because we're talking about a lighter florally cup, so we don't want it to be over extracted. But gosh, that feels like it's too fast. Yeah, we're already 176, almost 200, and we're only at a minute 14. That feels fast, and it's already flowed through, right? It's already flowed through pretty much. So yeah, this is a little bit on the coarse side. And the problem is that because this has a larger orifice at the bottom, there's no real resistance to these times when you may have made it a little bit too coarse. If you're using something like the Bee House, it can be a little bit better because when you go coarser, because it has a natural restriction that retards the flow of the water through the whole coffee bed. So here we're 223. 1 minute, almost 2 minutes, but 223. So, I could stop and try to let it catch up, but really nothing's happening because it's already flowed through. So we're just going to keep on rock and rolling. Just a little bit at a time now, just a little bit of time just to keep the water rolling and keep the grind saturated. Hopefully extraction will continue. Hopefully it won't be too under extracted. That's a concern. This is also why I like to go very coarse and just use an immersion brewer like Clever or the Bonavita, because it's a little bit less, when you're making coffee for yourself, it's a little bit less thinking. It's a little bit more, just kind of no-brainerish. So, man, 278, 2 minutes 34 or 40 seconds. Oh yeah, no bloom. Yeah, no, I mean, this coffee is quite well tempered, I would say. Quite well tempered. So there's no blooming going to be happening. Blooming really is a function of the CO2 degassing of the coffee. At least that's the story I'm going to tell you today. I could be wrong. I could be very wrong. Okay, so 310, 336. We're actually not too bad as far as like time and so 350. I'm a little bit too heavy there. 358.8, 320. So we're going to finish up, by 330, 345. Not bad. Not bad. Not bad. Not bad. Not bad. Not bad. Maybe not great, but not bad. Where's my glass? I need my special tasting glass. There you are. I'm actually getting some really nice, despite my sniffling, just as I'm standing here moving, I'm getting momentary whiffs of like some kind of like florally fruitiness, like almost like a citrus or like orangey. Oh, actually quite apricotish. Huh. That's surprising. And Mark says, tasting your old geisha should be quite interesting. Yeah, especially since we're trying to figure out, is geisha worth it? And hopefully it's be good so that you could be like, well, even though I spent $100 in this bag, I can now use it for the next year. All right, so let's have a look here at our elixir. I'm going to pour it into our cup. Push this aside. Push all this aside. There's our mix there, right? Nearly 1 year old geisha. Does it actually have a roast? It does have a roast date. Let's look at the roast date. Oh, not quite a year. 4th of April, 2023. I bet there's all kinds of coffee people out there like, oh my gosh, why are you using such old coffee? You're totally a charlatan. Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Thank you. Oh, let's have a look here at the overhead cam. Well, the coffee cam. Still good clarity. I mean, like the brew looks solid, like as far as clarity, and well, I don't know what we're looking at. I don't know. It's clear. That's nice. There is some apricotish, like it's changed since I poured it and got away from the ground coffee and smell it directly. Like it's certainly not as apparent as it probably was a year ago. There's a little bit of bitterness. I think it could be because it's hot. We're gonna wait for it to chill down a little bit. A little bit of woodsiness. Like if you were to try this, if I was to give this to you and you're like, this is geisha, you'd be like, what the hell am I drinking? It's like, okay, this is not, right now, the initial 2 sips, this is not the geisha experience that you're expecting. Like if I'm hunting, like after I've swallowed the liquid and I'm hunting in the bowels of my cheek jowls here, there's some of that geisha like fruit, maybe a little bit of that florally flavor, but you've got to like dig into the bowels of your jowls. I'm like, but the initial, like right there on the front of the tongue, like a light florally like citrus, the hints of what it used to be. Like it's like hinting that this is what I was like when I was young and vibrant and alive. But now that I'm old, it's not so. Get it florally. Now it's cooling, that bitterness. So those first two sips was pretty hot. So the bitterness was strong. But now that it's cooling down a few degrees, it has tempered a little bit. It has tempered a little bit. And Baldhead says the quality of the bag and the valve is being tested. Yes. Well, who knows? Maybe I haven't really sealed the bag as much as I probably could have. I don't know. I mean, I thought I did, but I'm not saying that I didn't. But it's been sitting. Thank you, Pete. I appreciate this. And Veneziano, this is not a necessary reflection of like the quality that you buy. But actually, maybe, I mean, it is, because it's not terrible. Like, it's not terrible. Like, I'm not like, oh my God, this is just disgusting. It's light. It's bright. Yeah, as far as lightness, like the body, very light, not too heavy. The flavors are fleeting. Like it's a fleeting. There's a slight dryness in the finish. Not negatively so, but just a slight dryness. I wish there's a way to speed up the cooling process so that, what if we were to aerate it a little bit more? Let's aerate it. What if we were to, oh no, I'm breaking things. What if we were to take our decanter and do some decanting? Let's see if that'll change anything. So on my microphone here, this wireless, it has this magnetic clip now. Sorry if that made a big noise. And leaning over by the espresso machine, this magnet just shot off and like stuck itself to the espresso machine. There's a little bit of like Fruit Loops. No, not Fruit Loops. Juicy. No. Lifesavers. That's what it is. You know, the fruity round rings of candy. There's a little bit of Lifesavers on the nose. Now, one thing, Mark, especially, if you're thinking about, well, what geisha should I buy? Well, there's so many geishas. And like, this is one geisha from Hernan Calderon from one place in Colombia. If you buy the Panama geisha from one of the fat companies there, or geisha from anywhere in the world now, it's going to have different characteristics, because that terroir of the where it's grown is really going to impact the coffee and how it's processed, how it's handled. Everything goes along. So it's not necessarily that Geisha is a monolithic kind of coffee experience. It's going to be just like every other coffee out there that you may have to try. If you're really interested in exploring Geisha, you may have to try several before you find one that you really like. But I think, generally speaking, if you're categorizing Geisha as a florally tea-like body type of coffee, and you don't like that kind of thing, then you probably wouldn't be well served by buying a lot of geishas to figure that out. Because if you really don't like that kind of like experience, you may spend a lot of money and spend a lot of time trying the different geishas, and you're like, well, I really didn't like any of them because I don't really like that style of coffee. But then again, all that trying, all that testing goes to your education, your personal education, the personal development of your own palate. Which is why when I'm my personal self and, when I'm working with my staff and training them, it's like, try everything. Try as much as you possibly can. Eat as much as you can. Think, more importantly, think about what you're tasting. Like, how would you describe that? What do I like about it? What do I don't like about it? And that just goes to help inform your palate and your knowledge so that, as you move forward, you can be more comfortable speaking about things, or sharing your experiences and talking about, oh yeah, I taste lychee, and like there's a little bit of apricot somewhere, and I have now Lifesavers, fruit Lifesavers, not the minty Lifesavers. Now there's still, now that it's cool, that little bit, there's a bit of like, there's still that kind of like nice. It's like a tea. It is a tea-like character. So if you don't like tea, you're not gonna like it. Like if you get a nice like fruity, like if you've ever had this what's it? There's there is a lychee tea. It's not really taste like lychee, but it kind of has this character. There's a lychee tea that's out there from China, black tea or red tea, black tea, with bits of lychee in it, and you steep it. And if you steep it for a long time, that's kind of what this is like at the moment. And Mark says to Greg, "What geisha will you be brewing today?" I have a Pepe Hijón Sidra ready, and Pepe Hijón from Ecuador. Like I was first introduced to his coffees, like really introduced, was in June, May or June, that right around the cusp of that month, right? I was in Bangkok, Thailand, visiting Don Chan's 1-1 coffee roasters, and he had coffee from Pepe Hijón, and I was like, holy moly, this is some amazing, beautiful stuff. Like he was trying to figure out how, because Don is was the Hong Kong barista champion. Now he has a girlfriend from Bangkok, so they have a business in Bangkok. And I just happened to stumble across this place. I didn't know that he was there. I walked in and I was like, dude, what are you doing here? He's like, dude, what are you doing here? Actually, if you watch the video of 1-1 Coffee Roasters on the channel, you'll see the interaction that we had. And I really didn't know that he was there. Like someone had told me, oh, check out 1-1. I was like, okay, I'll go check it out. And so part of what we were doing, he was trying to figure out what he wants to bring to the World Championship that was happening later in June of last year in Athens, Greece. So he had a couple coffees that he let me try, and man, this one from Pepe Hijón was just gorgeous. Like I was so like surprised at how great it was. I was like, I reached out to Pepe when the Ecuadorian Coffee Association was like, hey, would you be interested in coming here and doing something? And I was like, yeah. I was like, let me reach out to this guy and be like, hey, I might be coming. I would love to come and see your stuff. But man, the coffee that he produces, what I'm leading by this is that his coffee, that if you have a geisha from Pepe Hijón, I would imagine that it's beautiful stuff. So I would say that's very nice, very nice. Yeah, let us know tomorrow what you think about it. I'm very interested to know then. And then Craig says, hey, Panama from Abu, washed, don't know what it means, but lot GW3421. Those it depends. Every producer is going to be different. They may have their own way of designating. It could GW could mean something like this particular area, and then this lot with it, 3421 could be like a combination of this particular lot and this day sorting, and it could be a variety of things. I'm not sure what that means. Oh, interesting. But yeah, and if you ever take the time to watch that 1-1 video, like I can't recall now if it was a Hijón coffee or it was another one, but definitely the espresso that he pulled from you there. And he roasted it in an Ikawa. Like I walked in, he's like, oh, let me make some coffee for you. So he ran outside to his Ikawa, roasted it, and then brought it back in and then ground it and brewed it in a Flair 58. The hand presso espresso machine, that Flair 58, that ridiculous looking contraption that you think can't really do anything. Best espresso of my career. Like I was I was like, oh my gosh, this is just beautiful. Like I've never had a better espresso, straight espresso than that ever. Like that was like one of the like in your progression in coffee or even in your own life as you progress through whatever career you're in, you have these moments where you're like, that was incredible. That was the best I've ever had, or like very notable. But that was definitely the best espresso. Like I had very notable espressos along the way. Some really notable for being amazing and some notable for being some of the worst. But this one I was like, holy moly, that was hella good. So as it's cooling, definitely getting nicer floral tones, getting more of that geisha type experience that we're expecting. Definitely, I mean, I'll say there's definitely like an apricot-ish fruitiness to it. Maybe there's some chamomile mixed in. I don't. Maybe even lavender. Like I don't know. Maybe I'm being led on by their description, but I can definitely sense there's something in that vein, right? It's not the initial hot brew was kind of bitter, but as it's been cooling, like there's definitely like a dampness to it. A dampness to it. Like it's not it's not vibrant, right? I think that when it was brand new, it was vibrant and like dynamic. This is like not so vibrant. It's kind of like what might be an analogy, right? If we think of Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? Schwarzenegger in 1985 was, the Terminator, right? Schwarzenegger in 2004 is still Arnold. We still love him. We still think he's great. We still think he's still Arnold, but he's not as vibrant as he was because he's older, right? It's age, time. I think maybe that's an apt comparison because now that it's cooling, I'm still tasting a lot of those old bones of the coffee. Like these descriptions are still coming through without as much vibrancy, without as much. No, they're still relatively clear. So the clarity is still solid. The definition is still pretty good. I mean, it's very pleasant. It's still very tea-like, still very light. So if you don't like tea-like coffees, you're gonna hate it. Hate it. Love it. Love that. But Geisha, is it worth it? Yeah, again, I think it does go back to the question of like, do you like this style of coffee? And if so, it's probably worth the exploration, especially if it's not going to bankrupt you. Like if you can find nice Geisha that's roasted nicely, then give it a try. But I was looking online yesterday because I was actually trying to see if there's anyone in the Philadelphia area that had Geisha at the moment so I could go there, buy some and bring it for today's show. There was no one. I did find one company that was in New York City that listed Geisha and they listed it as a dark roast. See, this is where like I was kind of like, why would you take that and make it a dark roast? Because like I mean, and I'm a big believer in like dark roasting coffee, right? Like I'm a big believer in like dark roasting quality coffee, right? Like a lot of roasters will buy cheaper coffees, lower quality coffees that they're going to dark roast because they think that the audience won't notice, the customer won't notice. But I'm not a believer of that. I believe that if you're buying crappy coffee, no matter how much roast you put on it, it's gonna still be crappy. Like you're starting with crap in, crap out, right? So, but if you buy nice quality coffee, my typical level of quality, and then you dark roast that, you're gonna make a better experience, right? But this roasting this dark, I don't know. That seems like there's so much like light nuance and florality that if you're just burning it, you're burning it away, and you're like, you spent $28 a pound on a coffee that you're gonna burn. And you're gonna what I mean by that, not burn, but burn away all of or put a roasty profile on it that's gonna mask some of these characteristics that are like what people seem to desire the most in Geisha. Not bad at all. Not bad at all for a year-old coffee. I'm kind of surprised. Michael, good to see you, man. You're always welcome. Always welcome. We are using nearly 1-year-old Geisha from Veneziano Coffee Roasters in Melbourne that was gifted to me by 2013 World Barista Champion Pete Licata. I say that because, I just want you to know that I am well connected in the world, and I can't say that with any kind of seriousness. That's just ridiculous. But it's been like I said to everyone else. This has just been sitting around. I have not frozen. I have not done any kind of special maintenance on it. I was just digging through my coffees here to see today before we started. I was like, do I have anything that resembles Geisha? Actually, what I did find in the freezer is a coffee that I'm going to wait now. I was thinking, maybe we'll do a show on it soon, but I think I'm going to wait till October to do this episode because I found a coffee that's dated October 2014, and it has been frozen for 9 years now. Because sometimes you just get coffee, you just put it in your freezer, just put it somewhere and you just forget because there's Not to complain, but there's a lot of coffee that comes through my door sometimes. And so it's like more coffee than I can consume myself. And I thought maybe, so when we get to October, we're going to bust it out and see what it's like 10 years later. The ultimate in freezing coffee test. How about that? How about that? That sounds good, right? All right. So this geisha that's now almost a year old, sitting out in its bag, is not terrible, right? And this kind of bolsters one of my theories, right? I have a theory. My theory is that if you buy really good quality coffee, you're very careful about your quality choices in your coffees. Quality coffees can withstand a lot. Like in this case, it's a quality coffee, nicely done, well processed. Flavors are very, clear and apparent, when they were new. And it's such a well done coffee that as the time has gone by, years gone by, it's still quite drinkable. I think it would still, if I didn't tell you that it's a year old and that there's, as Mark pointed out, that there's no bloom, I don't think you would know. I think you'd take it and be like, well, it's not as beautiful as I would have imagined in Geisha, but I think you would still enjoy it. Michael says, that's a good problem. Can you go over some method of freezing you have? I've tried vacuum sealing food saver, but lately I've been lazy and been using twist top tubes. It's working. So yeah, here's the thing, Michael. With most anything with freezing, you just want it to freeze as rapidly as possible. Now, in the world of coffee, right? Like this coffee here, this is a coffee from the Philippines that was gifted to me by a friend of mine. This is a sweet Arabica that you can tell. This is actually an interesting varietal from the Philippines because it's very elongated. This is the sweet Calasan coffees are something I've worked with for a very long time now, for about almost 10 years. These can be some beautiful coffees. But anyway, coffee such as this, as you can see here on this bag, on this listing, it has moisture of 11 to 12%, which to me is a little bit high. I prefer 10 to 11, but this is the moisture content of this coffee. Somewhere around there. It may or may not be accurate anymore because it's been sitting in this bag for, I don't know, for a couple months now after being transported from the Philippines. And that's not a lot of, even in its green form, that's not a lot of moisture, right? There's some moisture, but it's not enough to cause molding, right? So it's pretty, like if you think about steak has a very high moisture content compared to coffee, because if you leave it out, it will mold, it will start to deteriorate, and your bacteria will grow and it will start to decompose and, turn black. And then you just trim that off and eat the aged steak underneath a few weeks later. Not that I've done that. When you roast the coffee, it's now about 2 to 3%, right? Because you've roasted out all the moisture and you have a product that now has 2 to 3% moisture. Now, if you're doing something like steak, well, steak's not so critical, but let's say you're doing something like vegetables, like green beans, peas, carrots, things like that, especially on the green bean side. Like you want to freeze that product as fast as you can because there's so much water inside those cells that if it goes through a slow freezing process, the slow freezing will crystallize and rupture the cell structure of the product, of the vegetable. Which is why if you freeze your own green beans or freeze your own tomatoes and you thaw them out, you eat them, they're all like mealy and disgusting. That's what's happening. It's the slow freeze crystallization that breaks the structure and causes it to all like be mealy. So that's why in industrial processes, they're actually, when you buy frozen vegetables, they don't taste like that because they do what's called IQF, individual quick freeze. So they're freezing at very rapid rates. So like almost instantaneous freezing, so that the crystalline structure won't be as severe. Like if you think about when you buy ice cream, right, from like a Haagen-Dazs or something, you buy Haagen-Dazs, you eat it, it's all creamy, it's smooth. You're like, oh, this is delicious. And then you might leave it out, right? And then it melts a bit. And you're like, oh man. You put it in your freezer, it refreezes, and then you eat it later, and it's very icy. That's a great example of the crystallization happening through slow freezing, because when you put it in your freezer, it slow freezes, right? So even though I'm going to say you want to freeze your coffee as fast as you can, it's not so critical because it's 2 to 3%. So actually, it's not critical at all. So forget that. We're not even going to say that. When it comes to freezing, I really don't do many crazy things about it. Like I'll just take the bag, right? If this bag is open, right? So let's say if I wanted to freeze this, I got this coffee last year in April. And so let's say I came home and I was like, okay, I love this coffee. I'm going to freeze it. I'm going to hold it at this position. I would just close the bag, right? Maybe squeeze out as much air as I could. That's not so critical. Into the freezer. That's it. That's it. I wouldn't even think twice about it anymore at this point. And it may sound a bit maverick. It maybe sound a bit reckless. But I mean, I've been freezing now coffee for 15 years, so I'm not so concerned about like having to worry about. Do I need to put it into special vacuum? You don't need to vacuum seal it because vacuum sealing is nice. It's not gonna harm it, right? But basically, what happens once you freeze the coffee, it will hold that coffee's flavor in stasis for pretty much indefinitely. And that's what we're going to find out for sure with a definite statement. Actually, it won't be that definite because I didn't do a critical tasting with notes back in 2014. I just took it home and tossed it in the freezer. Other ones we've done with more criticality. But this one, we have not. But really, you just put it in the freezer and don't worry about it. It's really going to be perfectly fine. Like I've never had times when it's gone bad. And here's something I was just talking with Greg Gesha about the other week. If you buy a new coffee, drink it. Don't freeze it. Just drink it. Do you like it? Like especially if you're buying fresh coffee, right? Like coffee that's a week out of the roaster. Like wait a week. If you bought it and it's roasted yesterday, wait a week before you try it, or try it through the whole time. And as you're tasting it, as you're brewing with it, you're enjoying it. And then if you reach a day when you're like, oh my gosh, this is beautiful. This is what I want every day of my life until the bag runs out. Take that bag, put it in your freezer, and then tomorrow, when you want to use it again, take it out, portion it, put the bag back, keep it frozen. Be beautiful. It'll be beautiful. 99.99999% guarantee it'll be beautiful. All right. Oh my gosh, it's 52 minutes. Talking too much. All right, let's do one more taste. Is Geisha coffee worth it? Yes. Gosh, I don't know if I ever give you a true definitive answers on this show, but really, again, it goes back to your personal preference. Do you like florally fruity coffees? Right? If you're someone that hates florally fruities, if you hate tea, like my friend Frank, he hates that stuff. Like he's just like infuriated by it. Like he's like, if I want tea, I'm gonna drink tea, and it'll be way cheaper. And it's true. I can go buy me some nice Fortnum Mason, Earl Grey or whatever it is, compared to a Geisha coffee for much cheaper and have, maybe a tea-like experience if I want that. So, yeah. But I say, yeah, go for it. If you like florally fruity coffees that are like really delicate and unique, that are very different than a lot of the coffees that are out there, then it's probably worth your time to explore that. All right. Oh, my contractor's calling. So many calls this morning. All right, time to head out. Hope you have a great one. Craig says, good coffee is worth it. Doesn't matter what varietal. Absolutely. So I hope that helps. Tomorrow we'll be back again, 10 a.m. with the coffee Q&A. Hopefully it won't last. I won't babble so long as today. But what do they say? Inshallah, right? By God's will, which is something you want to make. If you ever go to the Middle East, here's a little tip. The Middle Eastern guys, they love to say the term inshallah, right? Be wary when that happens. Why? Because you know what? You're like, hey, let's have a meeting tomorrow at 9 a.m. Inshallah. So you may get there at 9 a.m. and you know what? If God willing, he'll make it there. But maybe God will only will him to be there at 11:30. So you're sitting there. It's 10. I'm like, I should have got a coffee. It's 11. Maybe it's 11:30. Salam alaikum. How are you? Good to see you. So, just a little tidbit there. Inshallah. It's always that's a great term to cover yourself. Your friends are asking, hey man, you gonna buy dinner tonight? Inshallah. All right, so hope you have a great one. Thank you very much for tuning in. Mom, have a you too, man. Have a great one to you as well. Hope you guys have a great one, and see you next time.